Chapter 3. This was it, her oasis, protected from prying eyes by its 6-foot-high, foliage-covered walls. The square enclosure also blended into nature from above. Root had used permaculture so strategically that any drone footage would look like run-of-the-mill, tropical lushness. However, inside the unassuming living walls, she had cultivated her own personal supply of the 10. Sure, Root had access to the doses at home. Mason jars filled with loose herbs, pre-packs, and even some Skechers stuff most dirts never used. But she preferred to grow her own whenever possible. Turning soil over thrilled her, as did worms between her fingers, and the smell of freshly cut plant medicines bubbling away on her camp stove. Some of them, anyway. The smellier, alkaloid-laden lot seemed to use their horrific odor as a defense mechanism, or revenge for being boiled and consumed. Ack. The hideaway was also another strategy to avoid Casa's scrutiny, like nature's own RF shielding, but for nosy parents. Root had always pushed the envelope on many fronts, especially when it came to her navigation practice, but in the not-so-distant past, it had become a shape-up or ship-out issue between her and Casa. The line had been crossed when Root stole her mother's dose when she ran out. The 10 was so personal it was practically a fingerprint. That signature quality had actually been used as evidence in court cases. But because the 10 was such an integral extension of the individual, unique and sacred, it was easy for negative associations to crop up in its misuse. For Root, that meant she had to find a way to deal with her desire to spend each waking second in 10 space, yet avoid addictive patterns and behaviors. For Casa, however, standing there with an empty mason jar, her privacy violated by the person she loved most in the world, she summed it up nicely and ironically with 10 words. One of those, a 4-letter unicorn in Casa's vocabulary and parenting style. You fucked up, kid. Grounded. No 10 for a month. Root had thrown a fit, but that bounced right off of Casa, who had switched from mother mode to detached roommate mode. Root's thoughtless act had really hurt her. It was like someone not only reading your diary, but reading it on the toilet. Disrespectful, disgusting, and perhaps unforgivable. Look, I missed my ordering window, okay? You're blowing this way out of proportion. You barely use yours. There was dust on the goddamn bottle. Root had all the excuses in the world, but the hard truth was that she had begun abusing her own supply, trying to burn too bright at the expense of balance and moderation. But just a week into her forced sobriety, even Harper's valiant counseling efforts failed miserably. Nothing could mollify Root's desperate, enraged, undosed brain. I was born into this stupid system. I didn't ask to be here. Screw you both, and screw the 10, she yelled one day after another guilt trip from Casa. Bolting out the door in a huff, she slammed it, barely missing Fella's tail as he came along. Root spotted a shovel in her neighbor's veggie patch as she marched away from home. With invisible steam coming out of her ears, she snatched it up and disappeared into the swampy forest. Walking farther than ever before and swinging the shovel randomly at the stupid plants. But in mid-stride, the shovel sliced down a bird of paradise, her favorite flower. She halted, a little sadness and shame mixing with her morning twig. Ah, damn. Sorry, Fleur, Root said, holding up one of the still connected but collapsed stalks. Then she saw it past the mangled Strelitzia regina and the thick grove of trees, ferns, and bushes. A miniature, narrow, and most importantly, secret gully. Piling up a few stones as a cairn, which would eventually be replaced by her beach gnome homie, she parted the dark green foliage. Stepping through, she proceeded cautiously, letting intuition alone guide her. Hummingbirds and scrub jays darted in and out of her field of view, fearless as they buzzed her and Fella, who was not amused. Soon, Root came upon the long-abandoned, illegal hunting camp off to the right. Not uncommon in her neck of the woods. Bushmeat had supplemented many a dinner table amongst both Reggie's and Dirt's during historical bouts of food shortages. The high walls of the surplus chain-link fence were encrusted with neglected, overgrown vines, obviously planted by the last inhabitant. Root stepped inside and began investigating carefully, feeling like a kid searching for pirate treasure. But alas, she found no doubloons. There was only a ruined tent, a weathered picnic table, and a dilapidated shack. "Ah, well, at least there's no dead body," Root said, recalling a recent news vid. Even without the 10, she could already visualize her plants growing inside. After a few minutes, she had decided what would go where. She also realized how she could mount a hidden door to the fence, maybe that thick one she had seen at the local scrapyard. But a tiny meow derailed her train of thought, drawing her back to the shed. Root had to put a shoulder to the stuck door, forcing it open with a sharp crack and some broken wood. She stumbled inside the dusty space and found a scared, half-starved, tiny black kitten. Hey, little guy. Whoops, girl," Ruth said, having picked it up to check for injuries. Apparently, it had fallen through the broken window, becoming trapped inside. Fella tried to investigate the mangy furball, but got a scratch on his nose for the trouble. "Okay, corners, Root had said as she swung her backpack off, putting the skin and bones feline inside. Fella ambled off, searching out some grassy, uncomplicated shade. In that now quiet space, Root sat there choosing, but with intent. And just like that, her vision of the future included images of the cat. Older, fatter, happier, and eventually helping her navigate. For Root, that was the blessing of the dose. Being able to reach forwards into the probability field and see the potential of things to come. But only if you maximized your free willpower and navigated from a conscious decision to the desired outcome. Hours later, she returned home and hugged a frazzled, confused, yet thankful Casa. It was their last big fight. Now Root had a plan for creating her own sacred space, which would require all her angsty teenage energy. She did keep the sweet shovel, though.